Hi, this is Rachel from the Dotting Center. Today we're going to make this curiosity. In this video, I'll show you all the techniques you need to make big, plumpy, puffy bubble dots on your mandala stones. We'll cover everything from dividing your stone into segments all the way through to plumping up your dots for maximum puff and height using applicator bottles. So stay tuned. Today I'm painting a natural stone. This is a Mexican beach pebble. I got a huge bag of these at Lowe's for $8 and I'm still working my way through it. Now the first step is to add divider lines so that I can make sure that my dots stay in line with each other. I'm going to use this 12 line divider and we're just going to stick it right in the center of the stone. You can check to make sure that the stencil is centered by paying attention to the lines on the outside and just make sure that everything is squared away. So check out the technique. So what I do is I start in the very most important line, and that's the one that goes from top to bottom, turn it around, and I do the line that's perpendicular to that line. And you just, when you use these flexible stencils, you pinch the two edges of the stencil so that it gives you a kind of a straight connection from one side to the other. And then you just draw each one of the lines, and that's how you get your segments all set up for you so that as you're painting, your dots will fall in line. Now the next step is I wanted to have an oval line so that there's a bit of a margin along the edge. So what I did was I just kind of looked at it face on, and since this isn't a circle, I can't use a compass. I just kind of have to eyeball it, and I want to make sure that the margin stays the same all the way around the stone. And now the last step is just to wipe off all the excess chalk, and you've got yourself a pretty solid guideline. Now for the center, I thought I'd get fancy. I made these little center dots using Pebeo prism paint and resin, and they're just kind of cool. There's something that's a little unique. So I'm going to pick one that's the right size and color for what I want to go for, and then we'll see how that looks on the stone, and then that one looks good. Ooh, it looks like an eye, doesn't it? Like a reverse kind of an eye. I think that fits beautifully, and we're going to go with it. So the first step is you got to take some glue. I use like just regular tack-it glue, and it's a clear drying. That's important. Make sure it's clear drying, and then you just put it right in the center, squish it down, and then you're good to go. Now I want to make teeny tiny white dots surrounding this center. And so I'm using the very smallest tip, and this paint I believe is FolkArt multi-surface in white. Now we're going to go with bigger gold dots, so I want to use my larger gauge tip for this. And you can see there's a little bit of a technique with this paint I found specifically. It's kind of runny. So what I do is as I pull the tool off, I do like this little swirl motion, and that makes it so that it has kind of a cleaner looking, more bubbly looking dot. Now we're coming in with FolkArt multi-surface paint. This gives a nice rounded dot. I'm using a wide gauge tip, but this still gives a really small dot if you just have a little bit of pressure. Now we're coming in with DecoArt premium paint. This is a little bit more runny, but it has a really nice rounded shape. It's not going to be super puffy. It's going to just have a nice rounded kind of raised look. One thing I know about this paint, is that I don't want to use it on a surface that is really vertical because it's just going to run. It's very, but it is runny, and it's kind of nice because it doesn't give you any marks in your dots. You're not going to get any kind of weird textural issues. It just comes out really beautifully and it dries nice and rounded, and you'll see. Now what I was doing here was just making the dots on the top larger because of the oval shape. So the dots on the top and bottom are larger, and then as they go along the sides, they get a little bit smaller. And now we'll extend that cerulean blue right in between those big royal blue dots and just make rays along the lines of the stencil, just so that it goes and it almost meets up with the oval line. And now we'll take that same paint and just make a bigger dot that ends right at the end of each of those rays, kind of completing that line. And again, because this is an oval shaped stone, I want to make the dots larger at the top and the bottom and smaller along the sides. And now we're coming in with a big dot right underneath the big royal blue dot. This one is LUMIERE paint. It's one of my favorites, and it's a special paint mix that I used. I used that paint along with golden regular gel medium, and it gives an ultra puffy mix. Now, if there's anything that I would have changed this row. Adding these gold dots in between here, what I would have done is use a stylus tool here. Not every dot needs to be puffy. And in this case, this gold paint is really runny and it spreads as it dries. So a stylus tool with some regular flat gold paint would have been much more successful right there, because you can see they kind of run and spread and touch the other dots, and I mean, no one's gonna notice, no one's gonna care, but next time that's always an option. So now we're starting to apply dots to the vertical surface, the curved area along the edge of the rock, and so you need paint that's going to be able to stand up against gravity. Okay, so if you get a bubble, it's very easy. You take your stylus tool and you just kind of massage it down, and then you're good to go. That's how you fix that. But anyway, I took the tip off of the bottle because I've found that you can get really super big dots without even having to have a tip. It kind of, the tips help regulate your paint as it comes out of the top of the bottle, and if you don't need it, don't use it. Okay, so we've already weeded out all the looky-loos, and you guys that have stuck with me, I'm about to share my most secretest special invention. It's called the wrist wipe-offinator. And you make them from old socks because, you know, the Goodwill and the thrift store, they don't take old socks. So what do you do with them? Well, you cut the toes out of them, and then you slip them on your wrist, and you make a paint wipe-offinator. Okay, so now everything is all dry, and you can see there's different levels of height for each of the paint brands. They have their own little characteristic. And now we're going to go in with green. And what I found was there was just a little bit too much pressure that I had to use on the bottle to get the paint to come out. So I took the tip off because these are really big dots, and I just used the nozzle tip without any needle tip on it, and that gives me just the right amount of pressure. Now I'm going to use some light blue metallic paint to just make top dots all the way around on those royal blue dots. And now we'll add a little tiny pearl white dot on top of the gold dots right around that second row. And now we'll add more white pearls down at the bottom. And now we're adding white on top of that cerulean blue row of dots. We'll do that all the way around. Now here's a good vantage point to see what happened with that gold paint. See how it spread and started to touch the dots that surrounded it? That all could have been avoided with a stylus tool and just a smaller amount of paint, just because it's such a tiny little space to get paint in. You don't want it to spread. But that's something to note for next time. And really, it's art, people. You can't be a perfectionist with this kind of stuff. And now we're going to add that final row right at the bottom. Again, you want to use a paint that can stand up to this harsh angle, and just go all the way around, just placing it right underneath the green dot. And then after looking at it, I decided to change the color of those cerulean blue dots. I changed them to a pretty metallic silver so that it mimicked some of the color that was in the center. Now this is where I learned from my previous mistake. I wanted to use stylus tools for those tight in-between spots, just going in between the gray and the green. And it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but this is another opportunity to use that silver paint on the bottom to, again, draw some of the color from that center dot down into the design. Okay, so now everything has dried overnight. These are super puffy dots, so they need more time to dry. And then I just take a wet rag and wipe off any of the chalk lines that are still showing. And those go away very easily because this chalk pencil is all chalk and no binders, no waxy binders that is going to give you a problem at the end when you're trying to wipe your chalk off. It just comes right off. And now the final step, we're going to sign the bottom, let that dry, and then add some high gloss varnish to add some shine to this baby. I'm using Liquitex high gloss varnish. That's just my preferred varnish, and you'll notice with more bubbly dots you'll get bubbles. The brush will kind of like make these bubbles as it goes over the top of that texture, and that's totally fine because unlike resin, these bubbles will just dry and pop. No big deal. Well, there we go. It's another project, and thank you so much for spending some time with me and painting today. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel because I have more videos on the way. And as always, come and meet me over at thedottingcenter.com and pick out some supplies for yourself. You deserve it. I hope you all have a great week, and the next video you're going to want to stay tuned for. Trust me on this one. Alright guys, bye.